Good evening. I see some familiar faces from last night. I see a few new faces for tonight. We are glad you're here. Again, I'm the pastor here, Pastor John Bright, and we wanted to offer this as an opportunity to help folks. Last night we were talking about the body, and we talked about those connections, right? Those connections. Tonight we move to the mind. That's where a lot of anxiety resides, right? In the mind, in the thoughts, right? But everything's connected. Last night we were talking about like those breathing techniques, right? That can tap in to calm the body down, right? To calm things down. Tonight we welcome Paul Simmerl. Paul is an ordained pastor. He serves, what's the name of the church?
Elpis Christian Church, which Elpis Greek for expectant hope.
Okay,
Yeah.
Which is out in Goochland.
Goochland County.
And he is a licensed pastoral counselor.
Certified pastoral
Certified.
counselor. Not state licensed, but certified by the American Association of Pastoral Counselors.
Certified pastoral counselor. I've been saying that wrong. Certified pastoral counselor at VIP Care. And I'll let him share any more he wants to tell you about himself. Again, Paul's going to share, take questions like we did last night. If you were here last night, take as many questions as you have for Paul. Give him a workout like you gave those two doctors last night. You go right ahead. You go right ahead. But as many questions as you want to ask. And then I've got a little bit I want to share with you with another handout tonight.
All right, great. It's wonderful to be here. Such a welcoming place, beautiful sanctuary. And just a little bit of background. Again, I was ordained back in the 80s. I have been serving in various congregations of various sizes since that time, since 82. I have served in urban settings, in fairly large pastoral settings, also in suburban type of middle-sized congregations, I guess I would say. And then for the last 19 years, I have served a small country church out in Goochland, beautiful, just soldier kind of people. It takes me back to thinking of my early days, born outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And when I first went to that church almost 20 years ago, I was moving there from a larger congregation in the Richmond area. And I said, well, what do you think the church is calling you to as you're reaching out to find the right match for your pastor? I kept asking, and I kept thinking they were going to ask about my background, my clinical training, which I had out in Dallas, Texas. I was a hospital chaplain, so I'm endorsed as a certified pastoral counselor, but I'm also an endorsed chaplain within the Christian church denomination. So did my clinical training out with Parkland Hospital and Children's Medical Center in Dallas years ago. But anyway, then I got my training with VIP Care and been serving in counseling ever since, in addition to pastoring the church. Kept asking what they were wanting, and I thought they were going to ask for my credentials, my licensing, something, my certification, rather, I should say. And they looked at me and they said, well, son, I don't know what you're asking, but we just want somebody to come out here who can preach and teach the word and just love us. And I said, I can do that. I can do that. And that was 20 years ago. So that's enough of my background other than to say I am my father's son. He was a career VA chaplain, and I've been a chaplain and a pastoral counselor and a pastor ever since. So anxiety, I think this is wonderful. I think it is fantastic that your pastor or whoever the leadership of the church is here that has pulled together to put this out to the community, because I really feel like we're in a time in the arc of where the church, capital C, not just a particular denomination, but the church, the body of Christ worldwide in its various forms, we're having to be called. I hope we're going to really step up to be kind of the old lighthouse rescue missions again for people who need to be, not to be asked when you walk in the door, well, what's your denomination, what's your background, what's your beliefs, as much as just we want to be a welcoming place to have you come in and be the love of Christ to you. And the need is huge. The need is huge. A couple of thoughts about anxiety. Anxiety disorders in all of their forms, and we can talk about what I mean exactly by that, but anxiety disorders are the most common emotional struggles of today. They affect, the estimate is, right around 19%, around 19.1% of U.S. adults. 19% of U.S. adults they're not all being treated for anxiety disorders, but they are struggling with anxiety enough that they could be diagnosed. If they came into my office, I could say, yeah, you got more than just, you're a little worried about some stuff. 19.1% of U.S. adults. That's 40 million adults. 40 million adults are struggling with that kind of level of anxiety. Why? Archibald Hart, who is Dean Emeritus from Fuller Theological Seminary, but also head of their clinical psychology program there in pastoral counseling and so forth. He writes, why the dramatic rise in the incidence of anxiety disorder? I mean, we've always had problems, right? Life is hard. In this world, you will have tribulation. Yeah. The Lord's overcome that tribulation. But you'll have tribulation. And he says this, well, in a nutshell, think about some of these reasons. And your pastor's exactly right. A lot of it is mind-based, but it's all connected, mind, body, spirit. He says, too many people live too disconnected. Isn't that ironic? In a time when we say we are more connected than ever. People got their phones. I intentionally left my phone in the car tonight so I wouldn't be distracted by it, but we all have them. A lot of us have them. We think just in a heartbeat like that, it's connection, social media. It's there. And people are, on the one hand, very connected. One of the things I'm dealing with as a pastor just today, as a matter of fact, is this morning we had a young lady, 40 years old, and associated with my congregation, who died very suddenly, cardiac arrest. Young mother, 2 children. And I got the word, I was on the way to the hospital. Before I could get there, they pronounced her, and I turned around and went to be with the rest of the family. And all of that took place in about a half an hour, 45 minutes. And by the time I got home and back to my church to sort of get connected with my wife there about who was calling and everything, she said it's all over social media. People already know. I was sort of thinking who we need to call, who we need to reach out, how do we need to. She said, everybody knows. It's all over social media. But as connected as we are, that we can do that, we are too disconnected with real connection. We carry too much debt. That's another reason Dr. Hart gives for a lot of anxiety. And then this one, maybe you can identify, maybe you can't, depending on your age, depending on what your circumstances are. He says we live at way too fast a pace. way too fast a pace. People, he says, were designed to travel at a camel's pace, but they behave like supersonic jets, running constantly on a supercharged stream of adrenaline. Maybe some of your doctors might have talked about adrenaline, I don't know. And they end up paying for that with worry and anxiety. Incidentally, globally, the estimate is 4% globally have really, really extreme ongoing anxiety that is really causing problems for them and their families. That's 301 million adults. So I am really pleased that you have said, hey, here's a good topic. Maybe a few people might identify with this. Let's talk a little bit with anxiety. Now, one of the things you have to do, I'm going to really watch my time here so we can have more time to just have give and take, and I can help you as much as I can based on your questions. But this material that I'm drawing on tonight, I thought was just good, practical, something to just sort of say, well, what am I dealing with? Am I dealing with fear? Am I dealing with anxiety? Am I dealing with PTSD, some kind of trauma, a generalized thing? Do I have OCD? You know, this is the kind of stuff that we struggle with. What are we really doing? Well, that's a good place to start, is with some of those questions, is to define what it really is, because anxiety is just sort of that big umbrella. And you have to think in terms of fear, worry, and anxiety. So what I would suggest for you is that you sort of put that in a framework to say, well, it's sort of one big umbrella, but it is also can be helpful for you as you think about what's going on with you and where you might need some help. Is, are you dealing with fear or worry or anxiety? What do I mean by those distinctions? Just real quick. Well, fear is a natural and necessary alarm system that is triggered whenever you feel threatened. You need to sometimes be frightened. It's a natural thing. I mean, God designed it that way, to keep you safe, right? You ought to be afraid if you, at some level, if you, you get too close to a fire and the wind picks it up and the flames are starting to go and you shouldn't say, okay, I'm feeling a little anxiety now, so I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm just going to kind of, recite some scripture and I'll be fine. Because if your house is burning down, you're going to burn down. If you just kind of say, I need to calm down. No, sometimes you need to run. Or sometimes you need to pick up a hose. Or sometimes you call 911. Don't pick up a hose. But fear is a good thing. It's a God-given emotion. It ignites a response that, again, back with your body and everything, to a real perceived danger. He says, such as running into a spider web. And you have that fear response, right? That fight or flight. I saw the spider web comment, and I thought of the young man that I have who's in my congregation who is a Richmond police officer, just recently retired. And boy, he's seen some stuff and done some stuff. But we were carrying some lumber one time into my church on a project we were working on, and this buff, tough Richmond police officer says, Pastor, just by the way, let me tell you, if a spider crawls out of this, I'm going to scream like a little girl and run. You're on your own. It's okay. He's not a coward. He's a smart man. He sees a black widow. He's scared of that, and he wants to do it. Okay. So just so you're clear, we're not talking about fear. That's the warning thing that you need to pay attention to. That is reasonable. But worry, let me ask you this, pop quiz. Is it an emotion or a mental activity? Yes. Smart man. But it's primarily a mental activity. Your cognitive behavioral therapy folks will say, when you really think about it, and my wife could spend hours talking about this because she's a licensed speech pathologist and has worked for years with traumatic brain injury folks. will say, actually, there's no real emotional content with an event. It's your reaction to the event. And you think, well, how can that, possibly be? But it's literally, if you think about someone who has senile dementia, traumatic brain injury, something like that, they don't have the same memories they used to have and so forth, then a particular event, they will not have the same emotional reaction. My mother, when she was living up in Seattle, had senile dementia. She got to the point where she did not remember my brother and me, and I would go and see her, and I would be ready to leave to fly back to Virginia and leave my mom there, my elderly, and it was tough. It's a tough emotion, right? To leave mom back in Seattle with my brother and go. My mom held her little magazine, and she'd look up, and I'd say, Mom, I have to go. I'm sorry, but I really have to go. And she'd say, that's okay. Thank you for coming. Seemed like a nice young man. I do have my reading to do, though. I'm like, see you another time, then. That'll be fine. That's not... My mom loved me. She didn't have the same emotional reaction, though, because of her brain function had changed. So, worry is not really an emotion as much as a mental activity that produces anxiety. In the recovery community, in the 12-step recovery community, and you start thinking in certain ways that are worrying a lot and thinking about this, and you're thinking, what if this and what if that, and I just don't know about this, and you're thinking the worst possible outcome. That's all mental activity, right? And that's what leads to your worry. It just doesn't come from whatever it's in the recovery community, they call that stinking thinking. That you can get worried and ruminate and worry over things to the point that you are, instead of praying, simply letting go of things that can't be controlled. Worriers obsess about controlling the problems. It's about control. Talking to themselves about how terrible it is or how terrible it will be, imagining all sorts of horrible results if the problem is not solved immediately. And over enough time, people even begin to believe that if they worry hard enough, worry will somehow solve the problem. Guess what? Worry just by itself doesn't solve anything. I like some wit said, worry, it's like a rocking chair. You can really get going. You can't go anywhere, but you can really get going, just rocking and rocking and rocking and rocking. That's what we're sort of talking about with worry. But then anxiety is a third category. Anxiety gets more to the clinical level. Anxiety keeps a person from relaxing, from resting. It's pervasive, it's long-term. Anxiety disorders can be generalized anxiety, which is just a pervasive form of chronic tension that manifests itself in all kinds of physical and emotional ways. It exists technically. DSM-5 diagnosis says it has to have generalized anxiety disorder, to actually have that as a diagnosis, it exists longer than 6 months. If it's longer than 6 months. And you really just can't put your finger on it. You just can't sleep at night. You have ulcers. You just can't get it together, and you're just, I don't know. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm not really sure what's wrong. Now you're into the clinical end of things. Phobias are not just, there's a spider coming off the wood. I'm scared of that. I better go. Phobias get, of course, much more in the realm of you can't go out anymore. You can't function. You can't work anymore. You're really debilitated by your fear that is strongly associated with a single object or place or event. And OCD, sometimes people wonder about obsessive compulsive disorder. That is now thought to be also under the anxiety disorder types of things. It is very similar. It's fear hidden behind a variety of obsessions and compulsions. A lot about control. If you just if you just wash your hands enough times, you'll finally get them clean, that type of thing. That's what we typically think in terms of the OCD kind of behavior, but I also work with patients who have OCD really that are it's just OCD of the mind. They just have these intrusive thoughts they can't get rid of, and they just keep coming back. And they're sleeping, they think they're doing great, they're getting ready to go for work or whatever, and they just wake up in the middle of the night and the heart's pumping, and they just, and they just think, I don't know, my mind runs away with me, is kind of what they say. That's when you're getting to sort of potentially a clinical level that needs addressing. And of course, post-traumatic stress disorder is a result of being victimized or witnessing a traumatic event, recurring visions, dreams, memories of trauma, and so forth. That, of course, needs real clinical intervention. We need to be careful. I'll just say this as part of the community. I don't even know what you all, maybe some of you all have family members. Maybe some of you all say, okay, I'm clicking off, okay, yeah, I have a clinical diagnosis of this, or my child does, or whatever. Others, maybe not. But we do want to be careful with our language, because I do run into people fairly frequently who say, yeah, I think I need some help. I really have OCD. Man, I have OCD. Well, OCD is, be careful. That's just because you check a couple of times to make sure that your microwave isn't still on or your coffee pot is off. That doesn't mean you have OCD. OCD means you can't really function. You really are really struggling to function. Same thing with panic attacks. People find it somewhat, easy to say, I must have PTSD. I really must have PTSD because they've had something, Oh, I get a little nervous when I drive in short pump area because I got PTSD because I had a car accident one time. Well, maybe. They may actually have PTSD. I don't know. Or they may just be a perfectly reasonable person who doesn't like driving in insane traffic, And they get a little like this, and I think maybe I'm going to pick a time rather than rush hour to go into that insane traffic. That's not PTSD. That's sensible thinking. So again, you have to think about. But if you start to think, particularly you have you're excessively vigilant, you are constantly checking for things, then you're more in that. Now, what do you do about it? Well, I'm tempted to get up here and preach today, but I'm not going to. But many Christians think that God condemns all anxiety and so forth, and, it says, let not your heart be troubled, just go and do there, just let not your heart be troubled, that's it. Done. It's not that easy. But it doesn't mean that it's not true that there are, for people of faith especially, scriptural resources, ways to have guided meditation with Scripture. One of the things I love to do, we're talking about the breathing exercises, is to combine Scripture verses with breathing, deep breathing, and so forth, to either the Lord's Prayer or some other thing, the Jesus Prayer, whatever, to combine those spiritually integrated things, to tap into it, to just... one author says, a book that came out recently was Don't Feed the Monkey Mind. And you might just need to do that. Replace it. What are you thinking about? Think about what you're thinking about. And if you're thinking about the worst case scenario of something that could possibly happen, okay, that's going to get you worked up pretty quickly. But if you can think about, okay, I'm concerned about this, I'm not going to stuff the feelings, I'm going to acknowledge it, I'm going to find my pastor or counselor or trusted friend to talk about it. Yeah, I don't need to pretend this isn't happening, because that won't work, particularly if your anxiety is at some of the clinical level that we're talking about. You can't just talk your way out of it. But you can think about where you have some distorted thinking about your situation, whether you're tending to just keep doing the same old thing over again and expect different results and things. That will keep you just rocking on that anxiety. So I'm sure your pastor and others can help you find scripture resources and things that will help you deal with this. But I hope that's just a little bit of background to just think in terms of reasonable fear, worry that we all have, but that can start to become habitual and excessive, and then really anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety, phobias, OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic attack. When those things are going on with you or your loved ones, please call somebody like at VIP Care, which is, by the way, it's not very important person care, although you are very important persons. It's Virginia Institute of Pastoral Care, and it's spiritually integrated psychotherapy. So, okay, I'm going to run out of time, and we need to. You always give time to the pastor for however long he wants to talk. So, so that's some background, though. So, what else could I do just based on that? What would you like to? When you came here tonight, you know, you're probably like, well, that's a nice little talk, but that's not really what I came here. I wish he said this. I wish he answered this. Okay, here's now your opportunity to say, well, that's fine, but what about this? So how can I help with that? I did such a great job, you don't have any questions. I just got to, you're not anxious about anything, are you? Yeah.
Well, on the OCD,
Mm-hmm.
I like my socks in the drawer
Mm-hmm.
so I can see what color they are.
Mm-hmm.
I like my shirts in the drawer so I can,
Mm-hmm.
at a glance, pick one.
Mm-hmm. Were you in the military? Or so?
No,
No, but it sounds like military folks I know.
I like putting my keys and wallet in a certain place when I get home so I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to worry about them
Right?
and I know where to find them.
Yeah.
Same with my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I go visit my daughter. Immediately she says, "You brought a phone in the house. We're all going to die from microwave."
Hmm.
Here, and takes it and puts it somewhere.
Takes your phone and,
Yeah,
and wants to.
puts it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the entire time we're there, I'm worrying.
Mm-hmm.
Got to remember to get my phone before I go home
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
because I have no clue where it is.
Yeah. Or if you're like me, you'd forget where it is, even if you knew originally. So yeah, yeah.
If I put something somewhere, I know
You know where it is, but it's they put it somewhere else. That's right. They moved it around. Yeah.
I feel like Helen Keller and
Yeah.
move the furniture.
Wow. Okay. So she really doesn't like cell phones. She really thinks it's microwave
Oh, yeah.
something. Hmm.
I raised her. She's probably got OCD too.
So your question is, or you're just commenting that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's okay if it's not 100 degrees out and you fry your phone, but
Yeah, that's the
yeah, yeah,
too hot for the phone.
yeah.
Anyway, so at what point does this become worrisome?
Well, I mean, I
Or is
think,
this just normal?
well, it's not normal to think your cell phone is going to, give you cancer. I mean, I really would say it's got to be careful to not just make closet quick. Well, that's not normal. You're going to get her to some help. I mean, people have opinions about different things, but I don't think the data shows that people are getting brain cancer because they're using cell phones. Yeah, I just don't. So you have a reasonable concern if she is very extreme of just, I cannot have a cell phone in my house. It's that sounds. My concern with that would be not to be judging of her or say, well, you've got OCD and you're praying. I would be concerned as a parent to say, wow, that's pretty extreme. You may not say to her that's pretty extreme, but again, say, honey, man, I wish, I know you're really concerned about that. Can you tell me more about that? Why? What have you read? What do you know? And you can get someone else, counselor or pastor, someone to sort of say, well, maybe you ought to talk to them about that. I don't know. You don't want to turn it into it's my phone, and I'm going to have it, because I will forget where it is. And then she's like, so you don't care whether I get brain cancer or not? Well, you're a great dad, you know. And then the next thing you know, you're at VIP Care for family counseling because you're going, yeah, you don't want that item to become a bone of contention. You want to do the loving thing. But the loving thing is also to say, God, it really worries me that I can't even come in here with my phone, and you're like, here. That's pretty extreme. So I don't know. I can't give you a quick answer of, well, at what point it becomes bothersome, but I would come at it from a perspective of there's nothing wrong. You know, it's one of the things about boundaries like that is to be able to say, well, you're not going to say, it's my phone, it's her home. She has a right to decide whether or not you bring this item into her home that is so you respect that. But by the same token, well, if it's unreasonable, if it's an unreasonable and it's causing problems, the more you can come at it from a standpoint, I'm really worried about how worried you are. What other things are you doing okay at work? I mean, because who knows, maybe she's stressed out about other stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with the phone. It's just, that's how it's manifesting itself, maybe. Yeah. That was too hard. Somebody give me an easier one than that. Yeah. 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 Well, it is just personal opinion, but I do think it's connected somewhat to the internet and to the. She was saying, it seems like everybody's getting an attention deficit disorder or a bipolar disorder, or, we kind of talk about it in the practice of it's kind of like, well, what's the diagnosis du jour? It's kind of like a narcissistic personality right now. Let me tell you, you're going to run into, or you may be, a person with some narcissistic tendencies, but not everybody in the world is a toxic narcissist. Not everybody in the world has a narcissistic personality disorder. That's a very specific thing. What is that?
Except every teenager.
Well, yeah, we'll give you that. We'll give you that. But I think you're pinpointing, you say, well, why so many diagnoses? I think part of it is that we do tend to want to categorize everything, diagnose it, find a counseling modality or a pill or something to fix it and everything. And I agree, there have been a few people who have stepped back a little bit on particularly the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual that's what we use to literally say, okay, does this person meet this criteria for this disorder, and so forth. Some people have pushed back and said that has gotten way out of hand. Use an example. There is certainly problematic grief that is complicated grief, that someone's they've gone through a loss, but they can't get past it, and it's just wrecking their life, and they can't move on with their life after a traumatic loss of a child or something like that. That's a diagnosable clinical thing. There's also such a thing as normal bereavement, where you don't have to run to VIP care because your mother passed away and you're sad about it. But if 2 years later you're not able to work because you see no point in living since mom has passed away, that's a clinical problem. But you're right. I think there is some overdiagnosis. So we have to be careful with that. As to why, I don't know, other than, like I said, I think we just have access to so much information. And the poor overworked doctors out there, and they are overworked, and the nurse clinicians are really overworked. Sometimes when people have gone to Google or something and looked up, and they have a teenager who is, driving them nuts a little bit, and they go and they say, doctor, I think my daughter, son, whoever has ADHD or whatever. Depending on how overworked the doctor is, he might say, well, okay, we can put him on this, and it might help. And I'd be worried before you get, don't rush into diagnosis. Yeah, yeah. Other things? Yes.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I was reminded of this last night, and I forget it.
My sister passed away in May, and her son ended up in the hospital not long after that. And he has been in and out of the hospital and rehab about 5 or 6 times since then. He is back in the hospital now. When we go visit him in the hospital and at rehab, he seems fine. He seems to be doing well. You know, he does all this. He goes home, and within a couple of days, he's throwing up. He's nauseous. He's not taking his medicine. And my niece, his sister, and I think it's psychosomatic, and, you know, we don't know what to do when we've tried to talk to the doctors, you know, get him psychiatric help or something. We think it's something other than just physical.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds reasonable. I mean, you said rehab, so he's not in
Yes,
rehab
he's
for
done-
substance
he's done-
abuse or anything like that. It's,
In the hospital about 5 or 6 times since then, since early June. And then most of those times going to rehab after that. And then he gets home and within a couple of days.
so physical rehab, but he's not.
Yeah, physical rehab.
Yeah.
And within a few days, you know, he's home and within a few days,
Yeah.
same thing all over again.
Yeah. So the onset was after the death in your family, though. Okay. It wasn't like he has a history of this, and it's a.
He did have some of the problems prior to rehab, but not repeatedly ongoing. This is his. He might have ended up in the hospital 4 years later, but not, you know, over the last few months, so many times in and out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a commercial for VIP care necessarily, but I mean, our approach is we would look at a situation like that and a couple of things. You really, as loved ones of our family members and others, that we want to get them help when we're really concerned about them and so forth. It's really challenging to say, you know, well, how old is he? Is he? He's 60. He's an adult man, and he's, you know, it's, yeah. You finally just hit it at 62 when you get that's the clinical diagnosis. 62, you're actually mature then. Well, okay, so you're just talking about adult man, you're worried and so forth. Yeah. So there's a complicated history there. It sounds to me, just off the top of my head, that it does sound like this traumatic event has triggered it being worse for him. And so, yeah, certainly to be able to encourage someone like that to talk to someone, to seek someone who is able to say, you know, just really worried about what's going on with you. Our approach at VetCare is to kind of have a fourfold approach. We look at, first we say what's going on with them physically. Is there any kind of substance use problem or anything like that? Is there any kind of physical reason for it? Before we go down, you know, rabbit trails of psychoanalysis and everything, we basically would sort of say what's going on with them physically, what's going on with them emotionally, what life events have they had that has triggered potentially something. Then, okay, well, let's look at how they're doing emotionally, and finally, what's their spiritual resource? What do they have a spiritual resource? Whether that's an actual connection with a church or whatever, do they have some kind of larger purpose or spiritual purpose or whatever? And if not, if we see, you know, deficit in areas, then that's what we would encourage, we sort of work with. But what I was going to say was, all you can do is really encourage them to get help themselves, because it's fairly frequently we do get calls at the practice where a mom or a daughter or a husband or a wife, somebody calls and says, really worried about Mary or really worried about Joe. I just don't know what to do about my father, you know. Yeah, what do I do? And I say, well, you can come in and talk about how concerned and how anxiety-ridden you are because of this problem, or you can give them our number. But no, you can't, we won't call them and say, your sister called, she's really worried about you, so, and we would love to be able to do that, but it doesn't work. I mean, they have to want it themselves. Anything?
Hold on. Stress that leads to anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody can hear. Oh, yeah. My question is,
What do you do with long-term stress?
long-term stress, which has led to anxiety, and for me, I know that I'm a very sensitive person, and I'm rather empathic,
Mm-hmm.
and I take on other people's
Okay, that's good to
issues,
know.
and
Yeah.
I feel it, internally, and it results in somatic symptoms. And I struggle with rest, getting good storage of rest. So what do you suggest?
Well, I think particularly when you're empathetic, and it's the kind of thing. It's like the double-sided coin or the double-edged. That's a gift. That's a spiritual gift, isn't it? To be able to feel what others are feeling and understanding. Yeah. But it also comes with it the cost of potentially you're feeling their pain, you're feeling and you're overwhelmed with it. Yeah. So I think in terms of, I think doing some healthy boundary setting for yourself and realizing there's a wonderful resource, I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but I recommend it all the time, that is just called Boundaries. When to say yes, when to say no. Pardon me? Yeah, yes, Cloud and Townsend. Right. Good book. It's called Boundaries. When to say yes. He's just saying the authors. They're Christian psychologists named Cloud and Townsend, John Townsend and Henry Cloud. They have the main book, which is just called Boundaries. It has sold millions and millions of copies. And I know that there are some, and you're like, oh, there you go, millions of copies. Yeah, I agree. There are some terrible books out there that have sold millions of copies. But this is actually a good one. And it is faith-based, but it helps you understand the difference between helping someone with their burdens, which is scriptural teaching, and certainly we are to help others when they are completely overwhelmed and they cannot carry the burden alone. Well, that's why we have the church. That's why we have community service organizations. That's why we have good friends and family who say, I will help you carry that. But sometimes we get a little bit mixed up about, now, just because they're under some reasonable stress, or maybe they need to make some decisions to better their situation, rather than you're not called then, even though you empathetically feel their pain, to step in and say, oh, honey, here's what you got to do. They might have to make the decision to leave that job or go to counseling themselves or do whatever. You can pick up that you're aware of their need, and you can say, I'm really concerned about you. Boy, I feel it in my gut. When you're hurting, I'm hurting. But that's a different thing than, and I will therefore take care of it for you. And I will do it, so you have to set healthy boundaries for yourself. So in terms of how to help them effectively, sometimes it is you decide, well, here's how I can help them. But it's different than if you're getting to the point where it's causing physical difficulty for you, then that to me is a boundary problem, because you're taking on too much then. Now I understand caregivers and so forth, you have an elderly mom or dad or something, it takes its physical toll if you're caring. But you sound to me like it's more general, like you go up to somebody who's upset and you're immediately upset. You want to, and you feel it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to redirect. Yeah, to turn it off. Well, again, I think to be able to, one of the healthy boundary setting is to be able to say, yep, I am thinking about this. You can help. It can help for you to sort of think, well, what is that? what is this rumination really? Is this helping them? It's not helping them. Is it helping me? If you're just sitting up at 3 in the morning ruminating over it, you're not helping them, right? And you're not helping yourself. So that is an opportunity for you to say, well, okay, have I done everything I can do reasonably that I feel called to do? Have I put it in their hands to, take responsibility for what they need to take responsibility for? And if you've said yes to both of those, you've done what you can that is reasonable, you've set some boundaries, but you're ruminating about it, well, then I think to find some activities, it may be some of the things you were talking about last night, I don't know, to literally turn on the music, have breathing, prayer, turn it over, recognize. Yeah, I can use, I don't know whether this fits or not, but I had an experience when I did my clinical training in Dallas, and gosh, it was wonderful training, but it was so intense, and it was at Parkland Hospital and Children's Medical Center, and I was the chaplain for the cancer patients and the trauma patients, and we had 6 or 7 deaths at night when I was on call, and lots of infant mortality. I mean, it was very, very stressful and so forth, and I was 20-something, thought I could fix all of it. And I carried 2 pagers around, one for Parkland Hospital, one for Children's Medical Center, and about halfway through my residency, my supervisor chaplain came to me and said, it's 5 o'clock, time for you to go home. Give me your pagers. And I'm like, yeah, but I know the other chaplain's coming on duty, but I was like, yeah, but I know these families, and I've been working with them, and I was there all night, and I was thinking, and he said, give me the pager. I turn it over. Other people are capable of carrying this load for a while. You don't have to carry it all. You're not going to be helpful to them. And I kept arguing back. What did he know? He was just a chaplain supervisor with 50 years experience, And I kept arguing with him, and he finally took him, and I said, oh, gosh, okay, I get it. He said, yep, I think God can handle this tonight, and you can stop being God and let God handle this one tonight, at least for 8 hours. Okay. Sometimes you need to remember that. Yeah.
Hey, Paul, can I
Yes,
add
sir.
one thing pastorally?
Yes.
That in the evangelical church, we believe that certain people can be called to a ministry of intercession.
Yes.
That intercessors, intercessory prayer warriors,
Absolutely.
will oftentimes have a level of empathy that is beyond other folks.
Yeah.
And it's simply so that they can press in. But again, like you were saying, you don't hold on to it.
Right.
You use it to press in, and then you got to let God.
Yeah, you're the vessel.
You got to let God have it, and with set times of prayer for the intercessor, if those feelings come back at your set time, then you need to press in again for that person. It's not it's not an ongoing kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We have and that image of that vessel, that you are a conduit. You have that feeling, and maybe you're helping them connect to the power that's greater than you, and you can do that. That's a ministry. I mean, that's a good thing. But when it gets as far as you, and you're holding the churning water instead of letting it pass through to the one who can really deal with it, then that's the boundary. You need to be the healthy boundary setter to say, okay, I'm going to step back. Yeah, I have a wonderful, beautiful 96-year-old saint in my church who is she is a prayer warrior. And she sits at home, and she can't do much else. She cannot see. She cannot get out. She rarely makes it to church, physically to church anymore. But she sits in her little house, and she rocks, and she doesn't rock worrying. She has her prayer list, and she feels it, and she prays, and gosh, man, the power that is in that woman. But she's in fairly good health. She's 96 years old. I mean, so somehow she has tapped into that ability to empathetically care and pray and check in with people. but then she lets go of it. She doesn't hold on to it herself. She passes it on. Yeah. Other things? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oftentimes, the spouse or their significant other
Here,
gets.
you
Yes.
have to use this. Hold it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Don't
Yeah.
move your hand around, just
Yeah.
like.
Okay. Sometime the
Yeah.
spouse or the
Yes.
significant other, or
Absolutely.
the sibling gets drawn down, too,
Absolutely.
and they end up needing help
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
And is there a tips you can give to become self-aware of that, or it's a brother, and
Yeah.
he's being brought down by his spouse's dementia.
Yeah. Well, in terms of being aware, I mean, I think it's great. There again, family members can't say, "Hey, I made an appointment for you to go get some help because you're over." I mean, that just won't work. But you can, you can certainly express and say, "I'm really concerned about the wear and tear. This is on you. How are you doing? Are you sure you're okay? Because this really does take." And hopefully that builds a little bit of an opening to, well, maybe could we give you a little respite time that we could go and you could just take some time for yourself? And every family a little bit different, But yeah, sometimes the caregivers. My own father was an example of that. He'd been a caregiver his whole life. He was a chaplain. He was, married to my mom who had dementia, and we had a very difficult time getting him to be able to say, go visit, spend a little time with her, tell her you love her, but then go to the park, go have a life besides, because he would go and just want to sit at her bedside for, 20 out of 24 hours, and it was killing him. He couldn't move away from it. So there are some good resources that, again, sometimes, everybody's different in terms of the approach, but there is a book, Pastor, you may know this, I don't know, is it called the 27-hour or something like that? It's something like that. I don't remember the author or whatever, but it's like the 27-hour day, or 26-hour day, something like that. You find, the internet is out there, you can find it, I'm sure, but it is a really good book, a classic book on the wear and tear on the caregiver. And it probably has some information in there and sort of warning signs and suggestions if you are being overwhelmed with being a caregiver. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In this specific incident, there's a book called "And Not a
Mm-hmm.
There's a book called "And Not a Bird Stopped Singing." It is designed for caregivers of dementia patients.
Yes, okay.
And it goes through the whole process of dementia, what it does, the grieving process.
Excellent.
It was invaluable to me.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
It's out of print, but you can still find it on Amazon.
And what's it called again?
And Not a Bird Stopped Singing.
And not a bird.
And not a bird.
In
other words, the world goes on.
Yeah, okay, and not a bird stops singing. Okay, that's great. Well, and this is why it's wonderful to have this kind of community gathering, because always remember, you're not going through. It is so easy for everybody to think they're going through whatever they're going through all by themselves. And guess what? You have neighbors, you have church members, you have others in the community who have gone exactly through what you're concerned about. And so part of what I'm excited about is that this kind of gathering can say, well, I know a good book for that, or I know a good counselor, or whatever. It is very difficult. We do hear at the practice quite a bit, and I certainly experienced this with my practice, that we tend to think, particularly with some of these really serious things, that you need to get to see someone, to a psychiatrist and so forth. One practical tip, you may have experienced this yourself. Got nothing against psychiatrists who understand psychopharmacology and all this, but these days, it's going to be about a 3 to 4 or 5 month wait in a lot of cases to get in to see that level of care. You can get in to see nurse clinicians who are specialists in in psychological issues much quicker. And they are working, side by side with doctors and other counselors and things. So just a little practical tip that if you feel like you're dealing with someone, unless it's an emergency, of course, it's like, well, they need to get hospitalized or something. But sometimes people will say, gee, do you have a good psychologist or psychiatrist in your practice that you can recommend? We really need to get that medication piece in to help with some of this. Is a very severe thing. That's hard to do. It's hard to do. They're very backed up. And so don't be afraid to use a good nurse clinician who has similar training, because they can prescribe medication and counseling and everything just exactly like the psychiatrist can. So, okay. Yeah. And okay, well, if I can ever be of help to anybody, just call and be happy to just talk. And my way of typically what I do with situations too, I'll just say we all have different. We have social workers, we have clinical licensed professional counselors. I'm the one certified pastoral counselor with the practice, but you can find my information there. And I will say, my usual way of doing things will be, I can't take third-party insurance, so because I'm not licensed by the state, but I'm happy to not have that thing. So it's sliding scale based on income. But I always am happy to talk with someone, for an initial pro bono, no cost, just to come in and just say, hey, can I help? Or if not, maybe I can direct you somewhere to the right person. I would be happy to do that, no cost, just to see if we can be a resource, because we want to be available. So.
I want to say thank you to Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Paul's available until about midnight, so he's just going to hang out here and, take appointments right as soon as we're done. If you guys would pass out those handouts for me. Do you have cards?
I do. I have a few, not too many, but.
So just, yes, if you want a card, get with him. Or yes, take pictures of it. That's what my kids have taught me. You don't need that. Just take a picture of it. Okay. You've got a couple of resources coming your way. Let me share this definition of anxiety. This is not a clinical definition, okay? But I like this definition. Anxiety is a disturbing unease that comes from inappropriate concern about something uncertain. I know. A disturbing unease that comes from an inappropriate concern about something uncertain. My mic is not on. Phil? Kirby said my mic is not on. Okay. I do have it cut on. I can hear myself in here. Okay. See me later, Kirby. A disturbing unease that comes from inappropriate concern about something uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty in that. Fear, he did a great job explaining that. Fear has an object. I don't care how much I talk to my wife about the difference between good snakes and bad snakes.
Yeah.
If there's a snake in the yard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a bad snake. Of course, some people will say, thank you.
If there's a snake in the yard, there's an object to that. Okay? She doesn't lie in bed at night thinking about snakes in the yard. If she sees one, it's a job for me. Now, she has gotten better through the years about dealing with a spider in the house. She still doesn't like them, but she'll deal with a spider. I got her one of those vacuums that has a long stick, and you can take the end off and suck bugs up in it. She doesn't have to get close. She does not have to get close. It worked. But you see, there's an object. It wasn't lying in bed thinking about the possibilities of spiders. Anxiety does not have a definite object. See, it's about what might happen.
Yeah.
What could happen. There's some uncertainty to it. It's out there, and some people describe it as, I can almost touch it. I can almost reach what it is, but then it's out of my grasp. I can't grab it. So one of the tools that we use to help people with anxiety is to use a chart like this. So I'm going to just walk you through one. You ready? Several years ago, I noticed I had a bump, a growth came up on my hand. See a little scar there? A little scar there. But that's the if I state the problem, there's a growth on my hand, right? That's the problem. What are the facts? Well, over several months, it got bigger and had irregular borders. Anybody who's dealt with skin cancers and things, those are warning signs. Okay? So then, what assumptions am I making? Human beings are already perfectly designed to make assumptions. You already are. But if you feel any deficiency in that area, consult Dr. Google. Because when you get a hold of Dr. Google, I don't care what medical thing you put in there, you're going to die. They ought to call it, doctor, you're going to die. I don't care what it is. Anything that could possibly cancer, you're going to die. All right? But maybe it wouldn't be that bad, Dr. Google will tell you it's cancer. Maybe you'll only have your arm amputated. Y'all are laughing. I'm serious. That's the kind of stuff Dr. Google will tell you. And so Dr. Google can feed all those assumptions we're perfectly capable of generating ourselves, right? It just puts it in there. So what I want to do is to stay away from assumptions. They don't do me any good. What can I control and what is my responsibility? Well, at that moment, my responsibility was to seek medical help. My physician, I called, said, come in, we'll take a look at it. If I've got any doubt, we can take it off right in the office. We can take it off right in the office. So I went in, looked at it, told her the history, okay? And I've still got a little scar here. They got everything. It was a clean border. And it was precancerous. So she didn't send me for tests. She didn't send me for anything afterwards. I said, anything I need? Nope, we're done. Keep an eye out for any more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And if I could just say
Yeah.
one thing about the precancerous piece. This is a perfect example, again, in terms of the kind of folks that I might see who have the generalized anxiety disorder. They might call me in a panic and say, "Oh my God, I went to the doctor. They took this thing off. It was precancerous." And I'll say, "Yeah, it was precancerous. Did they get it all?" "Yeah." "Okay, you're okay. That's a good, you got good news from the doctor, not bad." So this is in a case of where somebody sees the exact same thing. Oh, it was precancerous. And one person is inclined to go into the panic stage. Oh my gosh, it was precancerous. What if? Watch out for the what ifs. What if I have cancer somewhere else? What if I have another mole? What about this mole? That's where you're getting into that rumination.
and so my other responsibility is to let go of the other thoughts. The old saying, let go and let God. If you're a Jesus follower, those things that are God's are outside of my control. If it's outside of my control, if anybody's had to wait, they didn't give me an immediate result on that. But you know what the doctor told me? Don't worry. The doctor said, we're going to send this off. She said, don't worry. She's a PA, but doctor, But don't worry. Seen a lot of these. Don't worry. So I took her advice. And in prayer, went to God and said, you've got this. And that doesn't mean everything's going to turn out okay, but I don't have any control over it. Earlier, hopefully my wife will get to watch this on YouTube. Earlier, when he was talking about somebody can worry enough to change it, the thing I say in my house is, boy, honey, I'm really glad you worried that one straight. Because she and I come at things very, very differently. She's got to worry about it for a while before she lets go of it and lets God. She's got to hold on to it longer. Eventually she does. Eventually she does. I tend to be the one that more immediately, but when I was waiting for that to come back, it did cross my mind. See, there was a guy named Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, way back when 1600s Martin Luther, who said, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop him from making a nest in your hair. Thoughts come and go. For us to tell people that a thought is bad or a thought is sinful is wrong. Because thoughts just come and go, right? You ever have one of those? Where did that come from? Okay. I told the congregation earlier, in the last 6 weeks or so, I've been going through some stuff lately, just making some advances in my spiritual life, and suddenly temptations from long ago suddenly just popped up. Okay? I didn't keep running with it. I noted it and said, that hasn't been, Lord, you gave me victory over that years ago. I don't need to give that a second thought. And I moved on. Okay? being able to let go of those things takes practice, but you can do it. This chart is not magic. It's a way to visualize. It's a way to see. Wait a minute. There are facts, and there's facts, and there's anxiety. This works for anxiety. It will also work for worry. This will also work for worry. Because when you're worrying, you've made assumptions. How do I know this? I've lived with a worrier for quite a while. I didn't say warrior, I said worrier. Maybe she's a worry warrior. The second thing that I wanted to give you all tonight is some information on screen time. This is a resource that I got from Australia in the internet. Great. On the second page, there's some lines there for you can text or you can call. One of those is a crisis line. Here in Virginia, it's 988. If you have a family member, somebody you care about, or you yourself, you feel like you're in immediate crisis, there's someone on the other end that you can talk to. Okay? So I always want to say that when we're talking about mental health. One of the things about our screen time today, one of the things about how our kids and grandkids they don't think like us older folks think. See, you think everybody thinks just like you. That's the other part, right?
Okay.
The way we think is a product of how we came up. The way they think, I illustrate this often with the congregation by saying back in the Dark Ages, they would take a box of grain and put it in a dark space, close it up, and leave it. They would come back later. There was no grain in the box, but there were rats. So what happened? The grain turned into rats. What? You don't believe that because you think in terms of cause and effect. You can't not think. Paul cannot not think. He can't undo his way of thinking, which is cause and effect. It's there. It's the way we think. All right? The screen time, the amount of social media and screen time today has changed the way younger people, and for some older people too, has changed the way we think. Too much screen time can become a problem, right? I keep a track, my phone, I call this a Smarty Pants phone here at the church. Has a way to track my screen time. I've got to get in there and be able to turn off my maps. Because like if I'm in the car and I'm traveling, it counts maps as all my screen time. I have to go in and look because it'll tell me how much I'm on each app, how much time I've spent on each app, and I subtract the maps time. You know, I subtract that little bit. Some weeks it's more than others, but I try to keep a watch on how much screen time I'm getting. I tell the folks here at church, If you want me to know something, don't post it on Facebook. Do not post it on Facebook and expect me to know it, because some weeks I don't get on Facebook. Some weeks I get on Facebook once or twice. And just kind of check in with some family stuff. And sometimes I do a little bit of scrolling. You know that term doom scrolling? It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Huh? Doom scrolling is continuously scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, looking for the worst thing. Because there's something worse down below. You're going and you're going and you're going, and there's something worse that's down below. And there are several good documentaries on social media. I would recommend you look at some of these. Anything that the basic premise is, if it's free, you're the product. If it's free, you're the product. Because the goal is to keep you on. And they've designed algorithms, and they know as much or more about human psychology than this guy does. And they design it to keep you, the product, engaged. It's not nefarious. It's how they make money. It's how they make money. You know? So this may not be like the sheet you need about the screen time, but you may know somebody who needs it. It's got some great tips on the second page. The first page will kind of tell you whether or not you might have a problem. The second page will give you advice. You know, how to do some things. Not take your dad's phone as soon as they walk in the house. That is not that is not on this piece of paper. And I just have to say, Brother John, that I wonder where she got the ability to have a really strong opinion from. I was just thinking that as you were talking. I'm like, she has the role model right here for a strong opinion. But, you know, a lot of this is about balancing online and offline. This also talks about gaming as part of the online. The majority of gaming today is done connected with folks, you know, outside. Having these, you know, having these resources is why we wanted to get folks together, to be able to share the resources that are available, to be able to share the resources. Tomorrow night, we've done body last night, we did mind tonight. Tomorrow night, we're coming back and talking about spirit. And so tomorrow night will be just me. Just me, because I'm qualified in that spirit area. I got one of them MDiv things too. But we're gonna talk about some resources tomorrow night, and those resources, empowered by the Holy Spirit, can lift a person up and give them tremendous help with anxiety. I am not opposed to somebody getting counseling. I'm not opposed to somebody who needs meds, getting meds. But I also believe that counseling can have an end point. That medication for anxiety can have an end point. It often gives an opening where you can do your work, where I can do spiritual work with someone, but that those things can come to an end. So tomorrow night we'll be talking about spiritual resources and the power of those. Last night, you were given the opportunity to hear about some very powerful things, right? Tonight, powerful, could help people, right? Same thing tomorrow night. Same thing tomorrow night. So, I'm going to let you stay up here because you don't have any resources in the back.
Great. Yep. So
He's got a few cards up here. But if anybody would like to, spend a little time with Paul, please come forward. Otherwise, dinner tomorrow night at 6. God bless.
very good. God bless. Thank you.